the composer for I Dream is one of the most interesting guys I've ever met. A great guy, Douglas Tappin. Uh, British. Uh, he was a barrister, a lawyer. It worked for CBS Records in London and decided that instead he didn't want to do any lawyering anymore. He wanted to become an opera writer. So he said that he and his family moved to America, and he was living in Atlanta. And he had an idea for an opera that was going to be based on the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so, fast forward a bit, he needed an orchestrator for it once he got it written. And he told me that he just didn't know any orchestrators, or he didn't, entrusting somebody with that heavy a task to orchestrate 2 hours of music that he had written was something that he just was having trouble with. So he said he sat at his kitchen table and he prayed to God to send him an orchestrator. And he was looking at albums, and he happened to come upon an album by the Christian rock band Mercy Me that I had done, and he loved the arrangements on it. So he said, "This is the guy." So he tracked me down, and he called me from his home in Atlanta and introduced himself. And I hear this guy with this heavy British accent on the line, and telling me that he wrote a opera about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so all the while I'm thinking, what does this guy, this white guy from London, know about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? I grew up in Memphis. My roots are there. I'm not interested. So I basically just said, well, that's a big commitment. I'd have to really think about that. And he said, well, could I call you back in a week and give you time to think about it? And I said, sure. And I was thinking, I don't really want to do that. I mean, no, it just doesn't work for me. So in exactly a week, I get a call again from this guy down in Atlanta. Have you thought about it anymore? And I said, well, I just don't know how interested I am in doing something like that. And he said, look, would you allow me to drive to Nashville and then play you some of the pieces in the opera? And would you allow me to do that? And if you don't like it after 30 minutes, then I'll just leave. And there's that, that's that. So I'm thinking, well, sure, why not? Uh, when he came to my home studio, I remember looking out the window, and he had driven up, and he got out of the car, and he was black. And I said, oh, okay, well, this makes a little more sense to me now, And the British accent had just thrown me off, over the phone. And I told him the story later, and we laughed about it. But he came in and started playing me the music, and about 7 hours later, he left. And I accepted the job, and I said, yes, I'd love to be part of this, because I realized this guy was just absolutely brilliant, one of the most brilliant people I've ever known in my life, and what a great guy. So I took on the job, and so we've done a few iterations of it. We did one show in Atlanta, which was 2 hours of music, and then just to work out the kinks, as they say. And so it had taken on a kind of because I was involved, an R&B-ish flair. I mean, it was pretty R&B at that point in time, so we were calling it an R&B opera. And it was with rhythm section in B3, and it was more like a Broadway pit orchestra. And we premiered it at the Arts Complex in Atlanta. And after that was finished, then we went up to New York and did 3 readings, trying to get someone to bite on it. But it was somewhere in between opera and a musical, and all the producers were like, I don't know, you know. So finally, we decided to make it uh, a little more of a dedicated opera. Uh, and so I rewrote it for a fairly large orchestra and R&B rhythm section with saxophones in the orchestra. And all the while, Douglas had replaced about 50% of the songs. So I was kidding to him. I said, Douglas, this is the gift that just keeps on giving for me. Um, and we got a good laugh out of that. But we did that version in Charlotte with Charlotte Opera, and I conducted that. Um, and we also did it in Toledo, Ohio, and in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and got a little bit of traction. So the next iteration that we did was supposed to happen. It was by Charlotte Opera as well, but it was the show was starting to catch on a little bit. Uh, we did that it was supposed to be in Charlotte. It was for about a 70-piece orchestra and rhythm section, so big, and the 32 singers. I didn't mention that on stage, but just a brilliant work, and the music was just absolutely wonderful in it. Douglas is really something else for having been a lawyer and just deciding one day he wanted to do opera. That's crazy, huh? So it still is being developed here and there, being tweaked, uh, but the opera companies are getting a little more interested in it slowly but surely. Sometimes it just takes some time, but I sure wish Douglas all the success in the world. He's a fantastic guy.